Did you hear about this? A perfect storm just crushed Kentucky's $9 billion whiskey industry. Here's what's going on. In the last 8 months, 3 major distilleries filed for bankruptcy. 23,000 jobs gone. Why? Well, first, Gen Z.
Hey, you all remember when these tariff wars were first kicking off and Trump was running his mouth off about Canada being the 51st state and making all these threats? And in retaliation against these threats, Canadian liquor stores pulled American products off their shelves, including Kentucky whiskey and Kentucky bourbon. And I seem to distinctly remember how a CEO was downplaying the importance and the significance of this by saying it was more or less not a big deal and that they'll be fine. Well, guess what's happening? The headline says it all. Someone cue the sad trombone.
Kentucky's $9 billion whiskey industry in crisis as Gen Z drinkers shun bourbon and the tariffs, this is the important part, takes their tolls. Without significant changes in consumer behavior, or which is not going to happen because you can't, maybe you can force people to drink whiskey. Trump could pass a law. Donald Trump could pass, that's it. Donald Trump needs to pass a law and force children in schools to start drinking whiskey for lunch. Instead of milk, you get whiskey, you get bourbon, you get Kentucky bourbon in schools, public schools. I think I'm onto something. Oh, me. Where was I going with this? Changes in consumer behavior or resolution and trade disputes. Oh, that's it. That was the point. Donald Trump's tariffs have bourbon producers in Kentucky. Or junior high students need to start substituting fruit roll-ups and what the is in those fruit foil things? They need to substitute Powerade with Kentucky bourbon. Morons. God damn it. Now my stogie went out.
My man is so mad to a point that he cannot even release words, and it's totally understandable. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and I'm gonna be your host for today. So in today's topic, we are actually going to touch on Kentucky whiskey industry gradually going bankrupt. And why so? There is a lot that the speakers or the debaters for today are gonna discuss. One of those items is obviously the tariffs thing, inclusive tax, and changing consumer tastes, rising costs in production, and also overproduction. Sometimes whiskey can be overproduced and people who are consuming and not as much as they were before. We're also going to talk about why Kentucky whiskey industry associates or stakeholders are in the FAFO phase. Also, we're going to talk about the likely remedies that they are going to take in order to revive the industry.
No, but I think y'all feel like people picking on Fawn and her husband, but they're not. And you being a financial broker should know this. You should already recognize these red flags. I know you know. You got to know if you're a financial person. Let's go over to Kentucky, to the whiskey industry, and I'm going to show y'all, in my opinion, why this isn't about race or anything like that. As you see here, the man with the dead hand won Kentucky in a major way. And we know that elections have consequences. Now, this is red county land, red MAGA land, white Kentucky. I'm just saying it's more white than it is black, I believe. So you have Luca Mariano Whiskey Distillery that filed bankruptcy. They didn't pay their bills either. This ain't a black and white issue, y'all. I'm just going to tell you. This is their district. This is Boyle County. Bankruptcy. First company. Next up is Garrett Distillery. Bankruptcy. This ain't no black area now. This is how they voted for him. Elections have consequences. This is not a race issue. I know people think it is, but it's really not. And finally, we have the Whiskey House in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Let me show you their district. I believe this is their district. Hardin, I think that's it. And from a numbers perspective, you have to streamline what you're doing, stick to the budget, and do right. Don't overexert yourself. But it ain't just, it's a lot of people that's filing bankruptcy. So if you know these people filing bankruptcy, I would do the right thing so I wouldn't file bankruptcy. I'm not saying they're going to file bankruptcy, but, I know a lot of y'all want to make it about a black issue and they trying to destroy black people, but the white folks going out of business quicker than the blacks. This is a character issue.
Let's talk about Kentucky. So I saw this on Threads. It says Kentucky faces major job losses after 3 major whiskey and bourbon distilleries filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, thanks to Trump. They are a red state, and because of all of his rhetoric, it made other countries say, I am going to boycott American products. So Kentucky definitely is facing a boycott. Let's get into a few more of these comments, and then I'll talk about the article that I found. Brittany says, in other words, they got what they voted for. They not only voted for Trump in 3 elections, they kept McConnell in office for an insane number of decades. So, yeah, I have absolutely no sympathy for Kentucky. And then Andrew says, Ontario is the biggest single purchaser of spirits and took U.S. booze off the shelf due to Trump's tariffs and his stupid, dumb 51st state rhetoric. He really made the whole world coalesce and say nope to America. Mom of 3 says, Maker's Mark has been my bourbon of choice since I was in my 20s, even traveled to their distillery in 2016. Now I drink this really great whiskey from Nova Scotia called Red Bank Whiskey. Donald Trump has destroyed America, and this stuff is just beginning. And then Nicole says, Canadians were their biggest customers. Elbows up, Canada. They're not going to forgive America for a very long time. They are going to continue to boycott because it is the principle. It's the principality, Smokey. Let's talk about this article from back in June. It says Whiskey Woes is Kentucky's $9 billion bourbon industry on the rocks. Kentucky has seen and enjoyed bourbon's boom over the past decade. Are we beginning to see its bust? Since at least 2015, the distilling industry has steadily grown. Businesses large and small reaped the benefits. But in recent months, 1 new Kentucky distillery has closed, another is millions in debt before it opens, a third is facing a lien the CEO calls a minor blip, while one of the giants of American whiskey has seen its stock price sink to its lowest point in over a decade. What's going on? While the issues with Garrard County Distilling, Luca Mariano Distillery, Whiskey House of Kentucky, and Brown-Forman vary, they all appear to touch on the most common market force of them all, supply and demand. Until recently, expensive new distilleries with business plans based on increasing demand for American whiskey seemed like a sure thing. Even established bourbon makers like Louisville-based Brown-Forman expanded and ramped up, especially during the COVID pandemic shutdown when demand skyrocketed. But now demand for bourbon in the U.S. is down, and overseas markets are either cut off. Bourbon and American whiskey are still largely off the shelves in Canada or hampered by Trump's wildly fluctuating tariffs. So it says bourbon and American whiskey are still largely off the shelves in Canada. So that was back in June. Fast forward to now. Kentucky faces massive job loss as 3 major whiskey distilleries go bankrupt. Kentucky's bourbon industry is worth $9 billion annually. However, it's facing unprecedented turmoil. 3 major facilities filed for bankruptcy within 8 months, affecting the industry and thousands of jobs in America's whiskey heartland. The industry supports over, listen to this, 2,300 Kentucky workers and has an annual payroll of $1.6 billion. The thing about it is it supports 23,000 Kentucky workers. Those are workers who spend money in the wider community. This is going to have a rolling impact, a ripple effect throughout this whole state. This is going to be so detrimental, and so much of it is unforced errors. Mounting pressure. Beyond the bankruptcies, established whiskey giants are purging workforces. According to Fortune, Brown-Forman cut 700 jobs in January. Green River Distilling eliminated 26 positions, or 25% of its workforce, reported the spirits business. Diageo paused production at its Lebanon facility through June 2025, affecting additional workers statewide. The perfect storm. Multiple factors are crushing distilleries simultaneously, according to the Washington Times. American whiskey sales declined 1.8% in 2024 to 5.2 billion. Rising inflation increased production costs, while younger consumers shifted towards canned cocktails and non-alcoholic alternatives. International tariff threats further squeezed export markets. I'll end with this. Local devastation. Lancaster Mayor Michael Gaffney confirmed that Garrard County Distilling's 60 workers were suspended indefinitely. When it opened, the facility represented the largest new independent distillery in Kentucky. Local chamber director Diane Bisher told WEKU that affected employees don't know anything about a potential reopening. America could have voted in a half-dead goat. America could have voted in a moldy cheese sandwich, and they would have done a better job than Donald Trump. Right now, we have the globe against us. Canada's going elbows up. Other countries are boycotting us, and I completely understand. So this is where we are. For all the people that voted for this and lost your jobs, I hope that you're stressed. I hope that you feel this every single day. I hope that your cortisol level has increased and your waistline has increased 3 to 7 inches. And I hope that you feel this for the next 7 to 10 years based on your vote.
Wow, that is an insane wish to them. That is an insane wish to the people of Kentucky. Well, when the people of Kentucky were mostly pro-Trump during the election period, it seems like the same policies that they supported are the ones that are coming to harm them. You can tell by the discussions that some industries are actually closing down while some are languishing into debts and bankruptcy. And this is going to go on as far as the policies that have been put are still in place. Not unless maybe Trump and his administration says that they are going to change a thing or two. As we discussed previously, there's the issue of tariffs and taxes where now the Canadian link up is now like a little bit under question because of course Trump has imposed 35% tariff on Canada and is actually going to interrupt the bourbon or the whiskey industry. And also the issue of tax, of course, tax on barrels is also another thing that is going to raise the cost. Rising costs of inputs, which also makes it to raise the prices of alcohol or whiskey in general, where now consumers no longer feel like this is the right amount I need to pay in order to enjoy myself. Which brings us to the next, which is the issue of overproduction. If they are producing more and people are not consuming that much because they feel like they are getting deep into their pockets, then of course it's gonna bring the issue of these companies trying to meet a certain mark of production and people are not consuming. Also, there's a change in pattern of consumption where now the report that is being forwarded is that Gen Zs are no longer drinking as much as the predecessors, maybe the millennials, the Gen X, the boomers. There's a completely new change in that pattern where now Gen Zs maybe have different tastes. Maybe they prefer other whiskeys or maybe they just prefer not to drink, and that's a problem that they need to address. While we can criticize how the Kentucky producers are suffering from the policies that they supported themselves, we can actually try to help them realize that they can resustain their industry. Of course, they need to learn from that in the next coming election, but as for now, just because they are Americans and of course their industry contributes to the growth of the economy, we're gonna help them. First, we can give them opinions on short-term fixes as well as the long-term fixes. For the short-term fixes, of course, the Trump administration can impose subsidies on production. Of course, when we say that inputs are becoming so expensive to a point where the industries now have to pay more in order to get things that they use to run their distilleries, the government can always provide subsidies where they can chip in a certain amount so that the producers can feel some weight removed off their shoulders. Another thing is the issue of tax and tariffs. They can revise the tax or the tariffs imposed on Canada, which is the main link-up chain where now I think most of the production inputs come from there, and also the tax on barrels, because I believe in the whiskey or bourbon industry there are taxes on barrels. These taxes can be reduced a little bit so that the producers can be able to afford the inputs. And the last one is diversification. They only focus on producing traditional style of whiskey. They need to understand the taste and preferences of the Gen Zs, which is now the coming generation. Of course, the boomers are going like it's not sustainable. Millennials, their numbers are already solidified. Gen X, they are kind of learning to drop alcohol in a way. So this is the Gen Zs that are coming, and Gen Alphas. They need to understand these generations and their drinking or consumption pattern, their taste, and diversify, create drinks or create whiskeys that actually meet their taste and market more to these generations. That is among the short-term fixes they can do that. For the long-term fixes, the issue of diversification, they can also invest on modern branding where they can fit into most consumers' taste. While we talked about reaching Gen Zs more, they can also try to reach to more of the millennials and Gen X, more of that population that wasn't consuming or has dropped the consumption, maybe due to them feeling that this product is becoming stale or it's just becoming so monotonous in a way. So they have to appeal more, they have to rebrand the production of the whiskey in a way that this population or these generations can be attracted. And another thing, apart from modernization of the brand, is also investing in sustainability. Right now, they are yearning to bring back sales. So the question would be, what if the sales are brought back? How long can they sustain these sales? Of course, sometimes, what I told you in previous videos, that the graphs of things usually go exponentially, and then they reach somewhere, they reach the optimal level or the plateau, and then they somehow drop. Unless you reinvent yourself. In order to reinvent yourself and the graph to continue going exponentially, you have to invest highly on innovation. And innovation simply means that you're gonna stay longer and you're gonna be having a competitive advantage in this whiskey industry. And important to note is that this is not just a business story, it's a cultural thing. Kentucky bourbon or whiskey industry is America's tradition, and its falling is not good for America, because this type of industries tell the American traditional, the American stories. It reshapes how we think, how we perceive trade, and also people's taste. And so it is important to revive these industries, however much they are in the find out phase. I hope that the producers are gonna learn from this, and also they're gonna revive the industry in the long run. So guys, that's from me. This is now the point where I give the forum to you, where you share or express your opinions and thoughts in the comment section down there below. Also, don't forget to go and check the original creators for these videos. Go on to their TikToks. The usernames have been embedded in the stitched videos as always. Follow, like for this channel. Make sure you smash a huge thumbs up button. Consider subscribing. Turn on post notifications so that you may not miss my next upload. And with that guys, let me meet you in the next one. Peace out.